okay, so as mentioned by Ariel, I am both MD and PhD, and I'm professor of this discipline since nearly 20 years now. And in my team of now gonna be 25 in a few months, we trying to put people from different backgrounds together. So it's maybe one key point of success. And if possible, as I am, we're trying to have, as I said, double hat or double competencies, like medicine, computer science, pharmacy, information science, nurse, and epidemiology, so on and so forth. So we have medical informaticians, we have nearly 9 research engineers now because we are just hired 2 more. We have also medical librarians. We have residents and post-residents. And we're gonna speak about data scientists a little bit later on. And then I can skip the rest, because Ariel told you about that. Very quickly, digital health is part of the training in medical schools in France, in Europe, in fact, and which is not the case completely in Israel. So, and in fact, in France, which is not the case in every part of Europe, and specifically not in the US, digital health is a subdomain of public health. So you can see that we have several differences. And you have academic associations, and you have one in Israel called ILAMI. I will suggest to have a look about it if you are interested in the field. We have a US association. We have a European association called EFMI. Ariel is too shy to say he's an executive officer. It could be more, but it's a secret yet. And we have the International Medical Informatics Association, which is about the planet Earth. So I'm not going to go too much in detail about what is digital health. In fact, I will focus this teaching lecture about clinical data warehouse, but just a point, and I will skip because we have quite a lot of slides. In fact, it's impossible for me to make all the slides. We will not have the time to do it in 2 hours. So we'll do what we can, and then the rest will be in. You will be able to read it more, and you can ask questions about. We have several slides about AI and deep learning, about and natural language processing, but okay. So we'll skip that. We're not going to speak about it. So okay, I'll skip this one, but it's a very important one. So this one, when I'm teaching the first course about digital health, we are spending maybe something like 10 to 15 minutes to speak about this slide, because we're trying to explain all the different fields about digital health, or digital health. Sorry, I'm speaking half English, half Hebrew. Okay, so one definition about clinical data warehouse is the following one. So CDW are computer tools that trying to collect, integrate, and then perform data mining on health data. And in fact, all these health data are coming from various clinical information systems. When you speak about hospital, it's something different if you're talking about clinical data warehouse in primary care. And it's also different when you are talking about clinical data warehouse at a national level. We'll speak about it later on. So we have various acronyms, maybe you're not aware of them. So EHR means electronic health record. The second one is laboratory information system. Then you have radiology information system, and PACS, picture archiving and communication systems. And then the last one is about I forgot the meaning of the CPOE, but it means prescribing, computer-aided prescribing, not only drugs, in fact. So the point of the CDW is to aggregate as far as possible a maximum of data from this health information system, hospital information system, but it's not possible to aggregate all the health data available in this hospital information system. So you will need to perform a hierarchy between the different systems, and we'll discuss about that. In fact, we are focusing about clinical information systems, and we are not integrating in our system all the administrative data, which are not so important for us because we are developing this CDW for patients. We're gonna see if we have time, or you're gonna see by yourself at the end of the slide that we have different. It's quite new in our system now, in our CDW. We're developing dashboard, so we are able to use clinical data warehouse to pilot the hospital. And in fact, it's very important. We have nearly live, let's say, which when we are saying live, in fact, it's day -1. So we have the vision of what happening till yesterday about the 3 pandemics and epidemics that currently occurring in France, which is the COVID, you heard of it, the flu, and the bronchiolitis, or the caused by VRS. So we are able to have a complete view about these 3 pandemic or epidemic in the same slide. So once again, one point is to say we are trying to aggregate as much as possible all the health data, but not all the health data. So once again, you will need to make some hierarchy, or saying that, okay, first of all, we want to integrate all the reports, the discharge summaries that are provided by the hospital. The second point is the DRGs, diagnostic related groups that we are coding. We are gonna talk about that a little bit later on. Okay, so once again, you have all these layers of hospital information system. Once again, electronic health record, the imaging, the DRGs. So what are the DRGs? It's let me explain that now. It's diagnostic related groups. It's every time you see a patient in outpatient or inpatient, you need to code the disease using a terminology called ICD-10 in France. I think you are using also ICD-10 in Israel, but you used to be quite a bit late. A bit late. You were using ICD-9 till very maybe 2 or 3 years, as far as I know. And then you have to code all the procedures, surgery procedure or radiology procedure, using, in fact, at the moment we are talking, there is no yet an international coding system. There is one, but not yet approved, called ICHI by the WHO, the World Health Organization. ICD-10 is also provided by WHO. And in a few years, everyone will use ICHI, but currently, just to give you a hint, in the US, they are using CPT, in Australia, their own. In France, we're using our own terminology called CCAM, so on and so forth. But once again, in a few years, yes, correct, everyone in the world will use ICHI, I hope so. So you have also all the biology tests, and very important, the health document. We're going to speak about that. In fact, 80% of the information are integrated, not, and we're gonna discuss that, in the health document in unstructured data. We're going to speak about that. It is very important. That's the first column. Then we're using, and we're going to speak about that also. We at least in our hospital and in some hospitals, we're using, I'm sure you are aware about the acronym ETL, extract, transform, load, and we are able to perform ETL for all these layers or software, let's say. And in fact, at this ETL point, we are able to perform normalization and de-identification. It's not exactly anonymization, but it's close to it. So it means we are removing, it's a long list, but just to give you a hint, the name of the patient and the name of the health professionals. So in the clinical data warehouse, there is no name of the patient, no name of the health professionals. So you are unable to perform a diagnosis on a patient. It's only for research and so on and so forth. We're gonna see all the objective of CDW. And then, and it's quite specific because we mentioned semantic. We have using at least two tools in our system. One is HeatUp, which is a cross-lingual terminology server. The other one is ECMT, which is a semantic annotator based on NLP tools. And as I mentioned before, we are using brand new techniques based on deep learning to perform better NLP tools, to adapt our NLP tools. Finally, we have data marts based, when after querying CDW, you have data marts for any end user. Well, what are the objectives in general? And I begin by that, if you are in a business, in a business point of view, most of the SMEs and the startups are working, are developing CDW to optimize DRGs. Oh, I forgot to explain to you. Why the DRGs are so important is at least in Europe, but I'm quite sure it's the same in Israel, all the budget of an hospital is based on this coding, DRG coding. So it means based on the coding for disease, based on the coding of procedures, there is a cost for one patient, and so you aggregate all the patients. So, and then the patrolling, or I don't know, let's say in France it's social security, is providing money for the hospital. So in my hospital, I think the budget is something like 200 million euros. If you perform an optimization of 1%, it's 2 million euros. So you can see that it's a lot of nurses that you can hire for this amount of money. So we are able, based on CDW, to perform optimization, very simple one, just comparing the structured data of the coding and the unstructured data based on the reports. So in fact, you can automatically detect what we are calling atypical profiles. So let me give you two examples. So you have coded a disease, let's say cholecystitis, but there is no name. The cholecystitis is not in the report. So how you can code cholecystitis if the term is not existing in the report? And the opposite could be true. You have in the report cholecystitis, and we don't understand why you didn't code cholecystitis in the DRG. So it's a very simple NLP tool, and you are able to provide to the people in charge of this DRG coding. It's in fact in France, in Europe, it's based on so technicians and MDs specifically trained for that, and it's quite important. Okay, so this is in the business point of view. If you are trying to analyze what's going on in the hospital. In fact, most of the cases is to improve clinical research. Why? Because we are able to perform feasibility studies prior to clinical trials. So I will give you a hint. You have a pharmaceutical company, they want to work on a specific disease, rare disease or not rare disease, and let's say they want to include, let's say 200 patients for France, and they are gonna ask for in my hospital, how many patients can you include in 12 months, in 1 year, and we are able to provide them, let's say a number, let's say 35, not because the clinicians say that just based on very sort of rule of thumb, but based on real data, real world data analysis. So this is very important, and every time you do that, it's money for the hospital. Every time you include a patient in France, it's around 2,000 euro for the hospital. So it's quite important. Then you can detect specific patient profiles at the emergency department. In fact, we are creating in my hospital semi-automatic epidemiological cohorts based on all the data in the clinical warehouse. So it's quite convenient, and it's still a work in progress in terms of even, let's say, research. We have several grants on that subject. We can also detect specific adverse events. We are also working on creation and follow-up of quality indicators, and we have the National Health Agency in France, which are quite interesting about what we are doing on that subject. And it's also a point for us of research. And finally, in this one is more involved in Paris, in limits, it's to develop and assess computer-aided decision support systems. I won't go too much in detail for you because as far as I understood, you're not in health students, but the concept of assessing is super important. So when you develop any tool for health, you need assessing. And in fact, it's like a drug, in fact. Like, I'm not so sure you're aware of the different phase of that a drug has to follow, but it's more or less what we are trying to do. And in fact, in France, it's exactly the case. You have to follow something very inspired by developing a drug. So it's very cost-effective. It's quite expensive now to develop the software. Something like for the assessing of your tool, it's something like, not for the developing, just for the assessing and following the rules, it's something like 300K euro now. So it's a mess. So it means that a startup has to know that before developing a software. We are able to access epidemiological surveillance at the individual or collective level, and as I mentioned before, tools to improve clinical practice, and I explained to you the use case of dashboard just for epidemiology, but that's an example. So, okay, more or less, if we are talking about pharmaceutical companies, it's I will repeat what I exactly just said, but you have to understand that it's very important for them. So it means that in fact, the clinical trials developed by pharmaceutical companies very expensive, which are very expensive, will be now also based on real world data, based on this clinical data warehouse. So it's not going to replace regular clinical trials. It will be something besides the regular clinical trials. So it's going to be called, and it's clinical trial based on real-world data. Sorry. So it's very important to understand that it's going to grow in the next 5 years. So I'm going to skip this slide. Do you have any question? It's okay. Do you understand my English? You are my
Yes, we
representative.
understand.
You understand my English?
Yes, perfect.
Even Peleg is understanding? Mr.
I
Peleg,
do
you
have,
understand?
yeah, I do have a question.
Okay.
How do you identify cross-infection by looking at the data?
Alors, it's a good question, and it's very difficult task. In fact, we have two. It's quite. We have do you know what's a cross infection? First of all, you're aware of it. You know it's infection that is coming from the hospital. So the person was not infected at the beginning of the hospitalization, and then because he was hospitalized, he has an infection inside the hospital. So we have several. In fact, it's a complex. You need to have data from bacteriology, microbiology. You need to have data from the report. You need data from biology itself. So there are several algorithms which are existing which are not perfect. So it means that, and then it's finally reviewed by an expert on cross infection, but it's saving time for them. So we're not developing. In fact, my team was involved in this development of this kind of algorithm, let's say more than 10 years ago now, but we are not doing that anymore, but it's still a research in progress. Okay? But it's a difficult task, to be honest. Okay. Some question? Or no? Can I go on? Okay. So in the world, the main tool that was used and one of the first to be developed was called I2B2 and developed by the Harvard Medical School. And because Ariel mentioned technology, it's an old technology. I sent a student there. MD was for his Master of Science in computer science. So let's say it's a bit outdated now. And in France, we have tools that are based on NoSQL technology, which are more advanced specifically in terms of response time. Let's say, to be rude and brutal, the response time between NoSQL and SQL is 10 times less for NoSQL. So it's an order of magnitude, so it's quite important. And we'll discuss about that later on. So I'm not going too much in detail for France, but let's say that, I'm talking about the state of the art in the academic field. There are a lot of companies developing CDW now. We have even Elsevier who developing its own CDW. But in terms of academic, the most important, and I'm aware that they are developing a NoSQL layer now, but I'm not aware of what's going on now. Alors, what about Israel? In fact, Israel and several other small countries like Singapore, Denmark, Taiwan is not so small. They were able to create an electronic health record at the national level, which is not the case in France and not the case in the US. There are some sort of comparison at the level of a 1 HMO, but okay. And in fact, more or less, all the information necessary for all you want is based on, is existing on your electronic health record. So it's very easy to develop a CDW at the national level. And just to, it was published in, I think, Journal Post or Time of Israel a few days ago. 15% of the main publication about COVID-19 was coming from Israel, which is not, I'm aware, a so big country. There is still less than 10 million people in Israel. And nonetheless, 50% of the COVID-19 main publication are coming from this country, which is huge, just huge. Why? Because you have electronic health record, a very advanced one with a lot of data. So it is quite convenient. I'm afraid Ariel did have some publication with Clalit. So if you are, I will advise you to, if it's possible for you, to get into this kind of organization, because you will find a very nice data, and you will be able, if you want to perform a research career, to work there. I'm not talking about the money. As I mentioned before, I don't have the good genes to earn a lot of money. Okay. Alors, now it is very important to understand that. As I mentioned, we are using ETL. We are spending a lot of time to modelize our clinical data warehouse with rich metadata. We developed robust query tools. It is time consuming to build, quite much so. Just for the dashboard, we spend days to develop one dashboard, but then it's much less expensive to maintain. And I mentioned that one month ago to students from data science. We are minimizing the use of data scientists. Oh, okay, so I forgot. It's not, okay. And there is another view, the one from in the Hospital of Paris. Okay, forget the ETL. We are developing ELT, which is very, so we are not transforming the data. We are putting them in a data lake. We are using on-the-shelf query tools. It's very easy to build, but then it's very, very expensive to maintain. You are going to use much more data scientists. So in fact, I'm afraid at the end, after maybe 2 years or 3 years, the cost of this approach is much more expensive than the one we have chosen. It is not proven. It is more or less what I feel, but I'm quite confident I am in the right path, but maybe I'm wrong nonetheless. So if you have ideas about that, I will be ready to hear from you. If not, I will continue. Mr. Benis, do you want to say something, or you are sleeping already? Is Mr. Benis with us? Mr. Benis left us. It's awful. Okay, let's go on. Okay, so in fact, just to give you some examples, we have in France several people like ourselves working on ETL, and we have several others that were working on ELT. But in fact, this is, let's say, in the real life, things are always more complex. And in fact, when we're saying that we are using ETL, that it's not that we are lying, it's as far as possible we are using this approach, but when data are not yet integrating in the ETL, then we are using an hybrid approach, meaning that, I will give you the example, that for the dashboard based on the virology, the data from virology are not yet in our system, in the CDW. So we used ELT, data lake, and then we are able to query the data from the virology and manage integrating in our system in the CDW, and we are able to provide the dashboard to which people? To the general director of the hospital, to the chief department of virology, to the dean of the faculty, and to the general, we have in France something like a general director, a general MD director. I don't know how to say that because it's not easy to translate them. So these people, they will need these kind of tools to pilot the hospital together. So they have some meetings together, and they are using this dashboard to, and that's why our tools, they were calling us crazy professors because we had so many ideas, but now for them it's not anymore crazy professor because they are using our tool not in an everyday approach, but in quite a lot now.
Yeah. Stéphane, just a short question.
Ah, t'es revenu, toi?
כן. אני חזרתי, כן.
Alors?
Je suis revenu.
Okay. Alors?
שאלה מלינוי, אני לא יודע אם קיבלת את זה. עברתי לעברית, סליחה. So I don't know if you got this question. What is a data lake? You define it because we have to define it. It's something crucial, even still not known by everyone.
Alors, it's how can I explain that? It's sort of you are putting all the data you are taking into without any modelization. You just put it in a database without any modification, without any modelization. It means that you will need a lot of querying, a lot of efforts to extract the value and the modelization. Instead of doing it before, you have to do it after. So it's exactly the point, once again. Or you do all the modelization at the beginning, that's why I was putting the rich metadata, or you are not putting any modelization, and the data scientist has to understand every data in the data lake, which is sometimes not very obvious, and you will need to, and that's why it's so time consuming. And it's not only the case. When you are doing one query, and sorry for that, you are doing one query, you will have to redo it again, and so on and so forth for another query very similar, because you are not based on any strong model. So that's why I was saying that I will think that the approach we are proposing, this ETL, this first approach is much more convenient on the long run. If you have a small project, let's say you have a small project as a student, don't do it. Do the second approach, because it's going to be, you will have the data in a few days. We will not, in the first approach, you will need weeks, and in fact months, to have any data, to build the tools, in fact. So for you students, if you have a sort of exercise to do, use the second approach. If you want to build a company, don't do it. Use the first approach.
Thank you.
That's my advice. Okay. Maybe you will have to explain more in detail what's a data lake in your. I was assuming you explained that, so we'll have to discuss that tomorrow morning, face to face, Mr. Benis. But I'm not saying that to the students.
Pleasure.
Well, maybe I'm not so sure they will find you after this meeting, but it's another problem. Yeah. To be honest with you, dear students, I'm much more. How can I say that? I'm worse than an Israeli. Okay. Alors, in our system, maybe I won't go too much into detail on that because it's really, how can I say that? Very close to our approach. So I will skip some very briefly to develop our system. Why it was easier for us that we did not reinvent the wheel. We used previous tools. We had this terminology server, very rich in terms of semantic. We had, before the project, a semantic annotator. And finally, we developed, since more than 20 years, a semantic search engine. Just to, and the new point was to get rid of this SQL approach and develop everything in NoSQL. In fact, before developing this Sun project, this CDW in Rouen, all these tools were redeveloped using NoSQL approach, and also the semantic search engine was completely destroyed to be used in the project. Why? Because in terms of scalability, the first tool we developed, semantic search engine, that was used for scientific articles before that, were not fit for this purpose, because we are not. It's much more complex to manage health data in hospital information when you compare it to health resources in the internet or scientific article in the internet. Much more complex. Well, so I think I will skip
Stéphane,
that.
if you allow me.
Oui, please.
More, you need to take into account an important point. First of all, the Rouen hospital is in a population have a population lake of around 4 million people. They are not treating 4 million people, but they are around this hospital a potential population of 4 million people, seeing that it's a population insured by Clalit. So it's a very large population, more, and Stéphane still not pointed it out, but you need to understand that here, all the work done is focusing on French, a very popular language. Think about the same issues, and Stéphane, you will be able to talk about it in few words if you agree about MIMO in the end, but you need to understand that Hebrew is not a popular language in the world. We know it, and so the equivalent work done in France here, it's not impossible, but it's harder. So that was my point only regarding the population treated by this hospital. In regard of the Israeli population, 4 million people, it's the half. And okay. Also they are dealing with French, a more popular language. That's all.
Yes, but look at the numbers comparing English and French. English is much more popular in terms of concept in the world. So we have more than 2 million concepts in English and only 0.7 million in French. I'm afraid there are very few thousands in Hebrew. It means that there is no terminology in Hebrew at the moment, which is a really meaning that someone has to do something about it, and it's a problem because you will need terminology in your language if you want to perform NLP tools, which is a big issue. So we have a terminology server. It's something at the margin of the teaching lecture. What we can say that I came as a sabbatical. I didn't say that. Sorry, I'm in sabbatical till at the end of May now, and we are developing a terminology and ontology, let's say, about medical informatics and digital health called MIMO. And we are developing it with Ariel, and this terminology is one of the 100 included, and so it's existing in ETOP, and it is a cross-lingual tool, which means a cross-lingual multilingual terminology, which means it's available in several languages, German, French, English, and maybe 2 or 3 words in Hebrew. And if one of you are able to help us translating some some concept, some computer science concept will be more than happy, and Ariel will give you 1 shekel per term. That's what you said before. No, I forgot. No, okay. No, I'm joking about the money. There is no money for that. I'm sorry.
But it's a good line for your CV. Involved in
sorry?
an international project.
Yeah, okay. We'll see that. Okay, so the semantic annotator is able to extract else concept from, and this we have currently over 21 million else document, and it's a long task. So it means that we had to use 2 servers, and it's costing 30 hours of treatment for using these 2 servers, and it's quite we at the beginning I was hoping to do it every week, and it was now, because we need to not to spend too many energy in Europe, we are saying I send a paper with my blood saying only every once in a semester, so it's twice a year, let's say. Just to give you what is doing the, I'm gonna, sorry for that. I will show you something that, oh, okay, that's it. So here is what we are able to provide. So based on the document and a query, we are able to provide all the concepts coming from all these documents in a one view. It's called, I'm sure you heard of it, cloud of words. So we are thinking, if we are talking about valorization, we are thinking of selling this kind of tool for let's say one pharmaceutical company wants to, for one drug, they want to know what are the terms that correlate, that are included in the same report. We will be able to provide that, and that's one idea we have. We don't know yet if it's a good idea, but that's one idea we have. So let's go back to, sorry for that. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna skip that because it's this one. And the third layer is a semantic tool. Okay, so in fact, this tool is a very powerful one. We are able to perform a substantiation, explosion in, so when you are asking for asthma, we are able to say, okay, every concept that are below asthma, like asthma induced by aspirin, asthma, allergic asthma, every kind of asthma, we will find these kind of things based on this explosion. And because, as I mentioned to you, this tool was unable to be scalable, we completely destroyed it, and we used, in fact, Lucene. I'm not. Have you heard about Lucene, which is a tool, an open source, yeah, let's say an open source tool that you're able to use. So that's what we did, and instead of doing this explosion, we are doing semantic expansion. I will show you a little bit later on. So in fact, all this Romain Lelong had a very nice PhD based on a very complex grammar, but it was so complex that it was unable to fulfill the scalability. So it means that it was a very nice PhD, but not a tool that could be applied in the real life. So we completely destroyed the tool. So it's a very, for him, it was a mess. It was very difficult for him, but we had to do it. Okay. Okay. Click. I forget that. Okay. Alors,
Stefan, I suggest before moving to the technical aspects, because it's 10 to 9.
A small stop.
Yeah, a small break of 10 minutes until 9, and we'll be back.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Mr. Peleg signed with his blood that he has to stay. everyone is able to have 7-minute breaks, but Mr. Pelek will sing for us now. No, maybe no.
Yeah, you are free.
So I'm leaving to. Thank you, Mr.
Board is running again.
Thank you, Mr. Benis. Well, alors, I'm sure you will see that again or with Ariel, because I'm not so keen about NoSQL technology. Let's say that what we have chosen is there are different types of NoSQL, and we have chosen at that time 5 years ago key value store and based in memory data grid. And in fact, we redesigned this. We at the moment we are not using anymore in-memory data grid, but we are using the concept of key value store. We are replacing SQL join by join indexes, and as I mentioned before, instead we are based on Lucene for all the NLP tools, which are quite powerful in multilingual aspects. So if you have to use a tool, you will have to look at Lucene, which is very interesting. These two servers, in fact, we have 3 now, is quite expensive tools, server, sorry. So for university, the first 2 are around 60K euros, 60 or 70K euros. So it's quite a lot of money. And all these tools, in fact, are based on, I would say that we already spent more than 15 years of developing the clinical data warehouse, without taking into account the fact that the HITOP is already more than 15 years. Like the semantic search engine is also something like maybe 20 years, and the semantic annotator is also something like 15 years. So it's a lot of money, but mainly based on grants, research grants. In fact, it means that we are not aware, we're not taking too much into account all the money we are spending on that, because we are in an academic field, okay, not in the business field. Alors, okay. Alors, I'm not going too much into detail about that. One key point, as I mentioned, is there is a total de-identification of the CDW. So we are unable to perform any real care on a patient. We are thinking of developing a sister project. So in fact, you remember that I explained to you that at the ETL moment, we have using a de-identification module. We are planning to develop another CDW, so it means another based on all the real data with the nominative data for care. So it means we are going to use for one patient for care, give me all the ultrasonograms or echography of the patient, and we will be able to provide that in less than 2 seconds, where the current tools are very, very complex to query. So in fact, we are thinking to use it in the real care, but it's another issue. So in fact, you have to understand that CDW currently are using for reusable data. So with all these aspects I explained to you, but also there is another trend using CDW for care, but it's not anymore on de-identification data, but reusing all the nominative data. Just have that in one point of your brain, it will be good. Okay, then we can skip that. It's all the let's say the policy, and I'm not so sure you want to understand that, but it's quite a lot of committees and commission and blah blah, and scientific blah blah and ethical something. we need to follow rules, and we have in Europe, I'm sure you're aware of the GPDR. Do you know what's a GPDR? Hello, Mr. Benis, do they know something about GPDR?
Not in my course, but I think that
Okay,
you
it's a
had to deal a bit about it as a reminder.
Just to give you a hint, it's a European rule. It's a lot of rules, in fact, for to protect not only health data, but every data of a European citizen. So it is applied to health. So we have to be very careful to protect the data. And why our tool is so interesting for the CNIL, which are the French Commission for that, it's because, once again, because we have de-identified at the ETL level, everything is totally de-identified in the CDW. So when they saw that, they never thought of it, this CNIL commission, they say, oh, we dreamed of it and you developed it. I say, yes, thank you. But it's not my idea. It was the idea of one of my engineers, Badisda Amna, and I thank his hand and he said, good point, good point. Okay, forget that. Okay, this slide is, I stole it from Mr. Ariel Benis. So in fact, forget the semi-structure, but let's say we have structured data and unstructured data. Alors, structured data is everything for biology, everything for DRGs because they are coded, CPOD data for prescription, drug prescription, everything is coded, okay? And what are unstructured data is text from else document. And why the semantic annotator I explained to you, which existing for French and not yet existing for Hebrew, is so important is we are trying to perform a posteriori structuration from else document to else concept based on terminologies. So this is quite convenient and it's quite important. So I would advise to read that carefully and to try to understand it. If there have some question at the final exam, maybe it will be on that slide. So please try to understand it quite nicely. Alors, what about quality of data? The quality of any data, else data, is varying according to the type of data. Sorry. So in fact, structured data are assumed to be of better quality, which is the case. And in fact, non-structured data are the less quality of data. Why? Because there are a lot of typos, there are a lot of acronyms based on the mind of one physician. Nonetheless, as I mentioned, at least in France, maybe a little bit less in Israel, 80% of the data are from this non-structured data. Nonetheless, there are some problems with structured data. There are some errors to give you a hand on DRGs. The technicians it's a human, and human can make mistakes. In fact, maybe they designed to make mistakes. So we have quite mistakes on DRGs coding, which is not an easy task, by the way. And even as for you assume that automats providing zero error in biology, which is not the case. And in fact, I'm not so sure if you understand that, but kaliemia is very important to check, because hypokaliemia and hyperkalemia can generate death. So it's very, very, very important to follow this blood item in specifically in ICU. So we have also always supervision by a human biologist to follow that. And why it is why unstructured data have the least quality is because any semantic annotator provide errors when they extract medical concept. I voluntarily I didn't mention the competition we won a few years ago about extracting medical concept. Nonetheless, we in this very difficult task of health documents on at the hospital level, we are providing a third of false positive and around a third of false negative, which is not very good. In fact, we're not very happy about that. The same tool to extract concept from scientific articles, we are much better, and we have only 20% of false positive and 20% of false negative. And data from primary care, which are easier, we have only 10% of false positive and around a bit more in 15% in false negative, as far as I remember. So Mr. Benis, because you are still alive, you will present the next slide because it's coming from you. You thought you were in vacation? No. Hello,
By the
Mr.
way,
Benis?
I think, by the way, I don't need to present it. I think that you remember it from the first, one of
You
the
have
our
it
two first
already.
lessons.
Okay. Alors,
Yeah.
I skip it.
But-
Alors. Okay, I skip
but-
it. Very good.
yeah. I think that
Okay.
we discussed about it during our first
Okay.
or second lesson.
In fact, I provide you several points already, but I would advise once again to review that very carefully because it's quite important to understand it. So in fact, more or less, we saw quite several points, and you need to understand it. And so please review that slide carefully. Okay, so in fact, I didn't want to say we have only 2 million patients in Rouen. It's not 4, but I forgive you. But nonetheless, it's we are talking about big data. Just to give you a point, this 21 million of documents providing 1 billion of medical concepts. So it's a lot of data. Okay, so. And what is nice is we are volume. So we are answering the first point, the first V of the previous slide. Okay, and then consistency. We can see that where is virology? No, there is no virology yet, but virology is not performed completely. So, and we can see that we still have several things in progress. And in fact, it's an old view because CPO is completely, it's a green, has to be in green now. But microbiology, on the other hand, is not completely finished. So we have some mistakes there. So here you can see that we need to provide, we need to be green in every point, in every aspect, and it's not the case. So it means that to develop a CDW, it's a long run process. It means we developed it since 4 years already, and it's not yet finished. So it's not developing in 2 seconds. No. It's a long process. And if we go not anymore at the national level, at the hospital level, but to go to the national level or to the primary care, it's another problem. We just beginning. We have a national project funded by the Banque Publique d'Investissement, which is investment, national bank investment public for private companies. So there is a company called LOAMIX, and we are part of it. So we'll develop in the next 3 years the clinical data warehouse, not anymore for hospital, but for general practice. And we're gonna use all the tools that I will try to present very briefly in the next few minutes. This I will skip. Maybe I will how much time do we have? Yeah, maybe I will do a very short view about what we have. So everything is in French. I'm sorry, I'm not going to translate that, but some points will be, I will explain that in English nonetheless. So so do you remember I explained to you that the PhD of Romain Lelon was nice, but we need to rebuild it. And in fact, because we had this scalability problem, one idea was to break everything and to develop modules. So in fact, instead of one big clinical data warehouse and one big query tool, in fact, we have a query tool by type of data. We have one query tool for document, one query tool for DRGs, one query tool for drug, one query tool for medical devices, and so on and so forth. One for lab test, one for blah, 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 blah. Okay. So that's one point to trying to avoid to go above the scalability problem. So how it's working? So in fact, here you have, let me go here. That means cough. That's an ICD-10 code for asthma, and this is asthma. So you will be able to query all these things. And do you know the Boole algebra, and or and not? Are you aware of this, Mr. Benis?
Yes,
Mr. Benis?
Yeah, you
Do they know?
You learned it during data structure and algorithms course and other programming related courses and mathematics.
Okay, it means you can perform a query saying A and B, parenthesis, or C, parenthesis, not D. Do you understand what I mean? Please tell me yes, because if you say no, I'm going to cry.
I am with you.
Okay, you understand what I'm saying. So it's here, okay?
Definitely.
So in fact, all these Boolean queries here, okay? And in fact, we have completely stolen, we are inspired, stolen is not exactly the case, but we are largely inspired by the PubMed interface. PubMed is a data biographic database in health in English, and we stole all these ideas. Okay. Why querying a clinical data warehouse is much more complex than querying a bibliographic database. When you're querying Google or querying a database, you say, blah, blah, give me all the article about asthma, and that's it. Here, no, my friend. Why? Okay, so in fact, you have 3 layers. So you query, let's say, asthma and cough and blah, blah, and so on. All these level is here. Let's say the deepest level is here, and then you have two more much higher level. This one, the higher level is the patient. So what means these queries? That here you said you have all the numbers of documents where you have asthma, but here you have the number of patients where there are some asthma in the documents. Do you understand me? It's very important to understand that, because it's quite complex to develop. And here you have all the stays. So it means, once again, that's all. This number means everything about asthma in the documents. Here the number of patients, and here the number of stays. Stays means hospitalization or consultation. Okay, same thing here. Okay, you have same thing here for every query. Finally, you have the final numbers. So here you have the final numbers about all this here, and then the patients and the stays. And sorry to say, maybe I'm going to be very, very pretentious, which I am, by the way, so it's not a problem. It's very tough. It's not so easy to develop. Okay. Okay, let's forget. Okay, I said that already. Forget that. There is, okay, that it's nice because this number is totally wrong. So it means sometimes you made some mistakes. Okay, forget. So this one means we are not so good to develop. It's the figures according to the time, and regularly, then there are much nicer way to present it, but we are very bad in terms of interface. So if some guy is good in interface, we will be able to hire you from Israel to work for us in France. And I am joking, I am half joking. Okay, now, okay, so we have to explain to you what about this semantic expansion we are talking about. So the end user was typing Lobstein, and he said, okay, I'm going to use a semantic expansion, and the system automatically will say, okay, you type Lobstein, but there is some semantic links with ostéogenose imparfaite type 3. We have bone fragility, and in fact here there is a mistake. I kept this mistake. It's only fragility which is a mistake. It has to be bone fragility osseuse. And then here you have maladie, enfin, os de verre and maladie des os de verre. So it's another synonym from Lobstein disease, so on and so forth. So you will be able to construct automatically the query and to send it to the query builder. You will be able to go a step further. As I mentioned to you, HITOP containing not only synonym but also relations. So once again, for the same Lobstein, you will be able to have the drugs that are indicated. Okay, I'm not going too much in detail here, but it's below the regular, which are approved by the FDA in the US or EMA in Europe, but I'm not going too much into detail. So we are able to provide a relation between a disease and a drug. And once again, this query will be automatically performed in the CDW. So it's exactly what I mentioned before. So we have strong modules, and this is avoiding a lot of time for the data scientists. It does not mean that we don't need any data scientist to do so, to perform so. We need someone, but instead of doing it manually using SQL or no SQL thing, it will use this interface, and it will go much more. It will be quicker and, sorry to say, better usually. Okay. What I've done? Okay, I made a mistake. Sorry for that. Sorry. Click. Okay. So I'll skip this one. So we have a tool for documents, and we are focusing on very important negation, because when you say there is no something, it doesn't mean if you have not a good tool, it will say if the sentence there is no asthma and you don't know about negation, you will find asthma and you will say this patient has asthma, which is completely the opposite. The other point is we suspect asthma. That's the second point. It's not exactly the same thing that the diagnosis is asthma. So we have no asthma, suspicion of asthma, there is asthma. So there is 3 levels, and and the system, this NLP tool needs to understand that. And finally, a little more complex, you will say, okay, the brother has an asthma, and then it's an history in family history of asthma. You with me? Are you with me?
Yes, I am.
If you are in the, if ataba mapa, kulamba mapa. Okay. Finally, we are able to perform a automatic segmentation of the document, and instead of querying all the document, you say, oh, okay, I will query only the conclusion, only the motive of hospitalization, the objective of hospitalization, sorry, so on and so forth. Okay, forget that. Okay, so here you have esophagus neoplasm tumors, and you will find it here. Okay, good point. You have, we spoke about this, so I'm gonna skip this one. Here you have, okay, this is totally anonymized. Here you have suspicion of hematemesis. I'm not going to explain to you what it is. It's too late, and you will not be happy about it, but you can check what means hematemesis after that. Here you see absence d'ictère, no ictère, which means no jaundice, so it's very fine. No cardiac blow, okay, and so on and so forth. Okay. And finally, here you have a brother deceased of a lung cancer, blah, blah, blah. So automatically it will say this patient has a family history of lung cancer. Okay. This is quite convenient. And then you will be able to query, provide me all the patient with lung cancer and a family history of lung cancer. And we will provide that in, let's say, in less than 10 seconds. For these 2 million documents, 2 million patients, 21 million documents. Finally, it's the data mart. So before that was the query tool. Now we perform the query. So you can see that it's still about, I'm going to ask you a question. Anyone can make an analysis about this pyramid, H pyramid. What can you say about this esophagus tumor? Can you say something about it? We'll let you work a little bit. And not Mr. Peleg. Maybe I will ask to meet Mrs. Golan. Can you say something about this pyramid? It's not so complex. Just interpret the pyramid. What can you say about it? Corinne, you with me?
I'm here.
No. Matichola Lagidli. Easy. Look at the numbers. There are numbers overall. So what you can say? Can you say something? Can you say something about the sex ratio? Is it more female or male disease?
Male.
Okay, that's 1 point. And can you understand that it's also between mid-40s, the 40s, and so it's really very simple. Mid-40s to mid-80s. So there is no esophagus cancer before 40. There is a small amount here. Let me show you. Okay, you can say there is few, but you can forget that. So it means that this disease is between 40 and 80 and 90, let's say. Okay, so that's it. And now you can automatically, you have the mean, you know the difference between, what about the mean? Oh, is it possible? 7 years old? Wow, I'm surprised. I will check that. Okay, and so you have the minimum, the maximum, and the Q1. So you understand all this, I hope. So this is automatically provided. And this is a real, let me explain to you, that's a nice story. It's the real health document for esophagus tumor, sorry, not cancer, but more or less cancer. And what about this? So it was a meeting like 3 or 4 years ago before COVID. And they said it was just a point of piloting the hospital. And one director was saying, hey, what's going on here? Why in 2007 there is no more esophagus cancer treated in the hospital? And then very angrily, one doctor said, because you fired, they didn't fire him, but he was so upset he left the hospital, and because he left it, there is no more. He went to the private office in front of the hospital, and then all these patients follow him, and there is no more patient in my university hospital. Do you understand that interpretation? So with this kind of tool, so the general director asked me, can you provide that for every disease? I say yes. So she said, okay, I am interested. Do you understand the value of this system? So it's once again, it's one person, it's one man, it was a man, yes. One man, the impact of one man is huge because all these, the difference between this and this, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money for the hospital. But that's the point, that the problem, not mine. Okay, so you will find this is ICD-10 codes. So so for every query, you will be able to have some information. But I'm not for so it is an example. And finally, as I mentioned to you, these clouds of words, plus you can even, so you have concept here, and you can even filter that for drugs, and you will have drugs. In fact, this one is really for the tumor, and this one is for the side effect of this one, by the way. So when you understand that, you will this one are steroids. So it's very important for any end user, to understand and to have access to this kind of data for one query. Okay. And once again, I'm not saying that we have for all the time we are thinking about the data scientist. Maybe a data scientist will have another ID, and in fact so he will be able to use the data inside the database and query something that it's not we didn't think of it. But then if it's a nice ID, we will integrate it in our system. It will be available to anyone. So that's the idea of using all these use cases and to continually improve the system. Okay, so, oh, that's nice. It's about the dashboard I was explaining to you about bronchiolitis. So you have so even sorry to say that, but even the general director has understood that because this means the bronchiolitis at the beginning of the end of November and the beginning of December, the epidemic was dying, let's say that. So she just reading that, she saw that, which is the case, by the way. So but now here when you go here, you have these data are provided by coding, by DRG coding, and these data are provided by the semantic annotator, and we are able to do an OR between these two numbers, and you have the final numbers here. So in fact, it's not an off-the-shelf tool that are able to perform that, but you need some tools to not only to present, but to query properly, to properly query, sorry. So here you have another tool about more or less the same one. And also the, okay, bronchiolitis is for young people, for children. And then finally, something much more complex about the three viruses I was explained before. So you have the VRS, the SARS-CoV-2, and the different VRS and the rhinovirus. So you have all the viruses that you can interpret them. So it's quite interesting for also for the chief virology department. This one is even more complex. I'm gonna skip this one. Okay, so we have this number of use cases, and as I mentioned, every use case, some are not so, but sometimes we need some data from, as I mentioned, virology, as we just saw. Currently, it's not yet in the CDW, and it's on the data lake, but we will, because of this use case, we will integrate the virology very soon. In fact, we are developing the ETL to integrate that very soon in January or February. Well, I'm going to skip this one, and this. Oh, okay. So in fact, these 2/3 of the use cases were based on MD thesis and more or less clinical research. And then only 20% of the use cases are really about research. 8% were about indicators. And then the rest were quite 2% for prevention, 2% for clinical trial feasibility, and only 1% for DRGs. And then we can see that there is a huge difference between departments inside the hospitals. The emergency is because we had one physician who was spent 6 months as a master degree, Master of Science in my department, so he was able to ask a lot of queries for his fellow younger fellows, and so on and so forth, dermatology, rheumatology, okay. But and then some are not coming, and it's impossible to be accepted. The tool is this CDW tool is very well accepted. Nonetheless, some departments are not using it, and you have to accept that. Like cardiology, look at them. Cardiology is a huge department in my hospital. They're not using the system. Okay, forget it. Okay. I think I will. Attends, let me check. Ah oui, non, attends. I will skip this one. I will go directly to, yes, to this one to finish. Yeah. Okay. Alors, currently we are the phase of, I developed some, I presented something about hospital. As I already mentioned, we have developing something for general practice, primary care. We have very few data at the national level called SNDS, but it's only, let's say, more or less DRGs at the national level, and also some data about drugs. So not so good, very far for what you have in Israel. We have also data from omics, genomics, transcriptomics, metabolomics, Ariel Benix omics. I don't know if you're aware of this one. Environment, IoT, medical devices, so on and so forth, veterinary medicine, and all these are about One Health. I'm not so sure Ariel explained that to you. Mr. Benix, are you still with us?
So, not in my
You're
course.
sleeping, or you with me?
You can hear me? Yeah.
Yes, I can hear
Yeah.
you. Okay, so
Okay.
explain
So
to you.
during my course, not. I don't think so. During other courses, but I will share with all of you a record of a talk that I gave during a course abroad as an invited speaker on One Health and One Digital Health, and you will be able to get a better understanding about One Health and what's the connection with big data and data warehouses, and why we need it for taking healthcare and medicine forward. That's all. Back to you.
Okay. Maybe we have time for a few questions. I was quite I didn't want to spend too many times about what we designed because it's in French, but if you have some question, I will be happy to answer to you.
And by the way, it's important also to clearly understand this lesson. You will have between 1 to 2 questions during the exam that will be related to the applications of big data theories and technologies in the real world.
Explain what data, what slide.
And so this kind of presentation, it's really critical for you to explain in an open question or in a multiple choice question to answer more accurately. So it's your time to ask questions. You have here a medical clinical expert for you. So open your camera, your microphones, and start asking.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
It's free.
Yeah.
Currently, the first 4 questions are free, and the rest
Oh.
is 1 shekel per question. So it's okay.
Ah, perfect. To what
Yeah.
extent are you certain of your system? Like how robust it's for mistakes? How do you check yourself for errors? Like,
Alors, how it's working? It's a good point. It's always an ongoing process. So let's go back to the example I gave you. You have a resident working on Lobstein disease, and he queries about Lobstein, and he had, let's say, 47 patients dealing with a query, and he went back to study these 47 patients, and maybe 2 or 3 days after that, he said, okay, in fact, there is a problem. You said these 47 patients are with Lobstein disease, but there is a problem. I don't know which problem. There is a problem. So we are analyzing the problem, and we say, okay, there is in fact a problem, and we are modifying the algorithm. So it's an ongoing process to modify the semantic annotator or the query to avoid a stop word, or sometimes, to give you a hint, we know that how can I say that Lobstein could be also the name of a patient. Okay, and if, because we are performing de-identification, if there is a guy named Lobstein, then the disease will the name Lobstein will disappear from all our system because of this patient. Follow me? So we will have false negative because of this identification of Lobstein. As I mentioned, we have several other aspects also to reintroduce Lobstein after the identification on the querying process. But in fact, we know we are we are trying to be very, very we are even more than the GPDR rules, but we are quite excessive in terms of the identification. But we are that's why we received the final seal from the CNIL, from this French association, French commission, and we know there are some drawbacks. So we are totally aware that our system is not perfect. I hope you understand that I explained to you that any data, and even biological data that you assume that's 100% sure, it's not the case. The system, the machines that providing the biology are providing errors. So in fact, it's you know that to perform a diagnosis in medicine it's always based on uncertainty. So it's far from certain. There is no certainty in medicine. So in fact, we have in a world of uncertainty, and all the point is to minimize the uncertainty and to maximize the quality of data.
and do you have any automated tools to help you pinpoint any inaccuracies or?
It's no. In fact, we have at every level, let's say, if we go back to laboratory information, they have their own quality tools to provide to check. I don't know if you when I read the minimum of the age, I saw a patient who is 7 years old with tumor of esophagus, I'm quite sure there is a mistake here. It's quite impossible. So that I'm not going to do it, but I will send an email after the course, and I will send to them, check this patient. I'm sure there is a mistake. So it's also a way of minimizing the mistakes, but there are a lot of mistakes in the hospital, and specifically in the report. The quality of the data based on reports are not good, but that's all we have. So it's better to use it. Why our tool is, let's say, it's difficult for me to say that, but our tool is quite well appreciated, is in terms of computer science, is a good tool, but the data itself are not so good. We are aware of it, and the end users are aware. We are explaining that we are training them, and by the way, we received a huge grant to train in digital health in France, and maybe we will. Unfortunately for you, I will be back in next October to teach that if you are doing a master degree. So I will remember you, Mr. Peleg, and we'll see what I will do with you. Okay, do you have any other questions? Ladies, there are more ladies than men. Do you besides maybe Almog is a man? No, Almog is I don't know, to be honest. Almog is a man? Mr. Benis?
No.
So it's a woman? I don't know, sorry. So besides Eina, there is only one, everyone is a female here? Oh la la. It's because you put
Almost.
Almost, yeah.
Sorry? Yeah,
So
okay.
by the way, if you don't have a question at this time, I wanted to point out something important about the answer of to this question. First, Stefan just talked about continuous improvement, and that's a very critical point when we are talking about software development, and more particularly from the medical informatics and medical software development. So during the first hour, Stefan, you discussed about the similarity between pharmacovigilance and the development of drugs and the development of medical software. And here we are introducing in some way the software vigilance that we are developing a lot in medicine. And that's exactly what's happening also here. Here you are talking from my perspective about the name of a disease and potentially the name of a patient. But we know it in French, like we know it in English, and also it's something really dominant when we are writing medical text, medical reports. It's short names or abbreviations, and it's also can be a mess. So what do you think about this kind of issues if you are thinking about, for example, in French or in English, treatment? We can short it with TTT also on a computer. How do you think that we can manage, other than looking at names and issues like it, we can manage abbreviations? Or do you think that it's another way to think today?
To be honest, we spent few master degrees working on that subject, and we are not successful at the moment. We have in ETOP we have thousands of acronyms, so we are able to detect ambiguous acronyms. But then, how can you say IVG means in France could be voluntary interruption of a pregnancy, or insufficient a cardiac insufficiency, left cardiac insufficiency. How can you say it is a cardiac problem or gynecology problem? It's very difficult. We can use The patient is talking. All these concepts are more cardiac than gynecology, and then you say, oh, okay, that's a statistical point of view. Maybe it's wrong. Maybe he's talking once about gynecology, and that's the acronym is talking about gynecology. So you could be wrong, and it's impossible to be wrong on that kind of thing. So it's better not to interpret things based on an acronym and saying something wrong than going in a wrong direction. So sometimes we try not to over interpret. We trying to, as this fabulous Einaf Peleg mentioned, we are trying to avoid low quality by over interpretation. And I don't know if you're aware that this below, besides me, is the Meonot. I don't know if some are living here, but look at my very nice room in the Meonot, HIT Meonot. Very nice. So thank you to host me in your very nice technological Mahon, something like that. Maybe that will be the conclusion of this talk, Mr. Benis. I tried to, maybe I skipped a little bit too much, but I didn't want to, so I was too fast maybe, but it's okay. And I hope you will be able to answer the questions.
Yeah. Stefan, many thanks for all of you.
My pleasure.
And I think that here you got an additional and more concrete example of what is a ground or a real a field of usage of big data, more here related to semantic data, another kind of big data. Next week we will I will show you some research related to omics, from genomics to exposomics, meaning communication patterns and more. So another way, and in some way the result of a data extraction or data extractions from data warehouses, like Stefan had pointed it out this evening. So thanks for attending this evening, Stefan.
Yeah, the document is available in your
on Moodle
somewhere.
Yeah,
sorry.
The presentation is available on Moodle, and like
so
each week I will share.
You have my email. At the latest slide, you have my email. If you have question after that, I will be happy to answer it. Besides Peleg, which asked too many questions. Now, even Peleg, I will answer it. Okay.
Great. Have a good night.
Happy New Year. If I don't see you, Happy New Year for 2023. But in fact, we don't care about this because we are Jewish. So what is the year now? 5783, correct? Yes, I think it is.